I'm sorry, at the conference so far?
Sure. My name is Mark Hakey. I'm from Detroit. I'm at Wayne State University, and I also have an affiliation with McMaster University in Canada. And along with Michael Dake, I'm one of the two co-organizers for this second meeting for the International Society for Neurovascular Disease. This society was formed in order to address a very important issue related to the vasculature of the brain. Dr. Paolo Zamboni several years ago discovered that there were abnormalities in the venous flow for people with multiple sclerosis. That led to a very interesting participation by interventional radiologists, imagers involving MR imaging and ultrasound, and radiologists, and to a lesser degree, unfortunately, neurologists. And our challenge has been to, in the last 2 years, to collect enough clinical and research data to demonstrate that, in fact, these types of diseases may be viewed as immunological diseases today, but there is probably a highly significant vascular component to them. And so if we marry these together into a study of vascular immunology, where we can show that abnormalities in the blood flow can lead to these degenerative effects in the brain, we would have made a major breakthrough. So the goal of this meeting has been to bring together experts from around the world, from studying the vasculature of the brain, imaging the vasculature of the brain, studying the endothelium, which is the vessel wall. So if you have changes in flow, will you damage the endothelium, to the neurochemistry involved? And we have had more than 50 faculty here at this 5-day meeting that have really made significant contributions, and I think already participated in a number of breakthroughs. Some of the areas that we have been looking at are trying to create a state-of-the-art or standardized version of where we are in these different methods, from the imaging components to the treatment components. Dr. Zamboni has presented a new concept on being able to easily evaluate the potential that a patient with MS has this vascular problem called chronic cerebrospinal venous insufficiency, or CCSVI, using plethysmography. There have been several important concepts showing the hemodynamics of the endothelium and endothelial health when the vasculature has been obstructed. There has been very interesting data presented on changes in cerebral spinal flow, which may be also a marker for problems of blood flow. There was some very interesting work presented on quantifying the blood flow in the neck as representing what is happening for the cardiovascular input and output to the brain. And the numbers that were shown here may indicate that we have a biomarker for developing some of these diseases. If you have a very slow outflow of the internal jugular veins, you may have a very much higher probability of developing diseases such as multiple sclerosis, or Parkinson's, or intracranial hypertension, or exertional headache, and possibly many other diseases. So this has been very exciting to have this as a biomarker. We've also studied the flow and perfusion to the brain to see if we can discover if there's such a low flow to the brain that the brain is suffering from hypoxia and ischemia. There was a very famous presenter here, a world leader on studying iron in the brain and its role. Many of the imaging modalities have now shown that more than 50% of the MS patients have high iron content, and we already know that Parkinson's disease patients have high iron content. So questions arose here, not that we have answers for them, but questions arose here. Is there some similarity in the role of the vasculature in the development of these neurodegenerative diseases? And I think the exciting thing about this is, if that is the case, can we develop new treatments in order to help both improve these patients and maybe even to help prevent the development of these diseases? And finally, for those people who are being treated, there were a number of studies presented on the safety and efficacy of the current angioplasty approaches. So overall, we had a very strong integrated approach for trying to better understand neurodegenerative disease and the role of the vasculature in that process. And let me stop there.
Ladies, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Tracy from Business First. I know that there's been some work done in the Buffalo region, after the volume of the work that you've done. Are you still working on additional trials in these? Not yet, no.
That's an excellent question. I think there's two directions that people are pursuing right now. People are trying to do more trials to get more clinical evidence-based medicine so that there's less ambiguity about the validity of this concept. And we're also looking at establishing something that I would like to call IMRIC, for the International MRI Consortium, where we can get sites from around the world to collect the data using the same protocols. And so potentially, if we could have a database of 1,000 normals and 1,000 patients, for example, and we could clearly show that the normals don't look anything like the patients, this would represent a definitive proof. That they're two quite different things, because one thing is treating patients, the other is actually demonstrating that these patients suffer from a particular problem. So I think we've come close to at least opening that discussion here at this meeting. And as an example, I just met with Professor Hu from Taipei, and he's a neurologist in Taipei, and they're interested in participating in this. So we're hoping to get perhaps on the order of 10 sites around the world to do this, and maybe a year from now we'll have some definitive answers.
How many sites do you currently have working on it?
At the moment, I have 2 sites in China working with me and 3 sites in the United States. But I think that's prior to this meeting. So I think at this meeting we've already interested another half a dozen sites.
Very good. And one last question for you in terms of funding to continue the work. Do you think that the creation of the new center within NIH to focus on translational research will result in additional funding for your work as well?
Well, I hope it results in funding for this work, because at the moment it's, again, being looked at a little bit askance by some of the other people, the neurologists and neuroradiologists, because they haven't had that hard evidence. Now that we're developing that hard evidence, this may be the perfect venue to go and demonstrate that this condition, CCSVI, or this abnormal vasculature, may have value for many different diseases. So the answer to the question is yes, I'm looking forward to submitting grants there, as I'm sure many other people are.
Any more questions for Dr. Hakey?
Yes, hi, I'm from WBFO Buffalo. Just a quick question about genetically for the prevention of these problems, diseases that you're looking at. How will that go along in prevention for the future of genetics?
Well, that's an interesting question, because we're not doing genetics. We're looking at the current vascular system in the patients and in normals as they are right now. And our own study has demonstrated that about 20% of the MS patients that we've looked at so far, and we've looked at many hundreds of patients, seem to have what might be a congenital vascular abnormality. Now, that may not explain the other 80%, but there may be some genes that can be studied that might help us understand why that 20% developed abnormally, in the fetus and probably throughout life. So this may be a nice way for us to collaborate with the genetics. But I would like to make one point clear here, is that genetics can be a good biomarker for the potential to develop disease. But I think even more exciting is if we can measure that the blood flow from the internal jugular veins, so low blood flow from the internal jugular veins and high collateral flow out very resistive pathways, is a marker for developing something like MS or Parkinson's. We may be able to do something for these people right away. So I'm a little biased that way because I'm an imager, and you're looking at people who have developed and are alive right now. I'm not predicting what their genes may do later. This may be as important as the whole genetics program. Can we predict who will have stroke? Can we predict who will have a heart attack? And that's not a genetics issue anymore. That's an issue right now, is how healthy their system is, do they have proper blood flow, and can we do something about it? So I think this is a very important and perhaps a breakthrough that has come out from this meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, ladies. Anything else before we wrap up?
I think that's a good case on my end.
Okay, Sharon, do you have any questions?
Dr. Hickey, I have a question for you.
Oh, just a moment then, and just in case the other ladies have to go.
Okay.
We, of course, would be very happy to chat with you. Dr. Zavadanoff is right there in Buffalo, and I'm in Detroit, but we're all accessible by email if you do have other questions. And please feel free to access our website and the material that Tara has prepared.
Thank you so much, ladies. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Hickey, my question to you is, first, I commend you and Dr. Day for an excellent symposium, educational symposium, not only for patients, but also these last few days for the medical and scientific professionals. It's amazing to me to know the difference between where things were a year ago with the research that's being done, and I think you brought together some phenomenal minds here and the expertise that have been brought to the meeting. My question to you, though, is all of this information that has come up during these last 3 or 4 days, how do you go about now sharing that information between the different disciplines? How do you move from here to get this information out from this meeting out to the public, out to the societies, the professional societies?
Well, let me work backwards then. To get it out to the professional societies, we have to publish. So it's very important that people continue to do what they're doing and publish. This meeting has had perhaps 50, in some cases, of the top people in their fields come and present. And this is the type of venue that allows you to create potential collaborations. And the wonderful thing is that throughout the day, whether it's being lunches or coffee breaks or late night dinners, we've seen a lot of people who might otherwise not have been working together now discussing issues of how abnormal flow could affect vessel wall, how abnormal flow could create neurodegenerative problems. So this is the environment where we establish new relationships. And from there, of course, the individuals now have to plan how they can address specific scientific questions to do that. And hopefully we'll see results of that even by next year from some of the groups that have come together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one small problem. Elizabeth St. Philip from CTV has been trying.
Okay, so since you have a strong background already in history behind this, you know that what started this was the interest in chronic cerebrospinal venous insufficiency, or CCSVI, as something that represented abnormal flow out of the brain, and possibly with implications to flow into the brain as well, or at least something that was causing problems locally in different parts of the brain. And that stimulated the formation of this society. The ISNVD stands for the International Society for Neurovascular Disease. And so we wanted to keep this much more general, even though the focus is on the venous side for now, and probably will be for some time. The cardiovascular system is a complete system, of course, with arterial input and venous output. Overall here, we've had a lot of discussion relating to trying to set standards from different components, whether that's the treatment or the imaging side, and possibly writing some white papers from this in the next year to kind of indicate to the community where we stand right now in at least how we're approaching this problem. And in terms of the people we invited here, however, we have more than 50 worldwide known speakers, some of them top people in their field. I have to tell you that if this had been at a convention for neurologists or neuroradiologists or the International Society for Magnetic Resonance, we would have kept 1,000 or many thousand people attracted by this program. It's 5 days of really excellent science dealing with issues of endothelial health and how blood flow can affect endothelial health. We had a superb keynote speaker, Michael Chop from Detroit, who's been studying stroke, TBI, multiple sclerosis, and the importance of the vasculature in those three diseases, and how people are trying to treat those now, sometimes with drugs as simple as vitamin B3, niacin, or even Viagra, or sildenafil as it's known. So he's done a lot of rat work, and he has a lot of happy rats right now. And but the point is, these drugs, niacin for example, can lead to an increase of blood flow to the brain. And this, may be very important, as some people have shown there are reductions of perfusion to the brain. There was interesting work related to this issue of perfusion and hypoxia and ischemia. There was one of the world's leaders in understanding the role of iron in the brain metabolism here, and several talks showing that more than 50% of MS patients are showing abnormal iron content somewhere in the brain. And this is very interesting because Parkinson's disease is also known for having abnormal iron content in the brain. And one paper was presented by our group showing that even Parkinson's patients, at least in the study that was done, that 2 out of 3 Parkinson's patients are showing venous abnormalities on the left side of the brain. And then perhaps one of the more exciting components of this was trying to show that if you can measure the total outflow of the internal jugular veins, and if this is very low, it may actually be a biomarker for developing multiple sclerosis. So this study was done with both normals and patients, and normals always had flow above certain value, but 25% of the MS population had values below the normal values. So this could be as important as genetic research that says, well, you have this gene, you're going to develop so-and-so. So if we were to image you and find you had this abnormal situation, it may also be a biomarker that you're going to develop something. And then finally, the program had discussion on the safety and efficacy of the outcomes of the clinical trials that have gone on so far, and I think the three published papers now have more than 1,000 cases showing that this is safe, and people are beginning to present their results now on the outcome of patients who have been treated.
And any results you said are beginning to present? Has anybody actually presented data?
Well, actually, today is the day where we're going to see all these presentations. So it's going to start in about 5 minutes. So that session hasn't taken place yet.
And then will there be some sort of press briefing, or will we get access to these studies, abstracts, to see what people...
Well, we do have an abstract book, actually, and we're thinking of, we're going to write a newsletter on this, which we'll have done probably, I would say, within a week or two, that will summarize all the presentations, and we will put this on the website that will be publicly accessible. And if you ask me, I can send you a copy of it ahead of time.
Yeah, if you could, that's great. We'll have our email address.
Well, just send me an email. You know my email. And I think the other exciting thing is that there were so many of these groups attacking this problem from different directions that this meeting allowed us the opportunity to mingle here throughout the entire 5 days. And I've seen many people begin to establish these collaborations. I'm hoping Paolo Zamboni's team, who met with my team, will send people to Detroit. I met with a fellow, Dr. Hu, who's got tremendous experience in jugular reflux from Taiwan. We've already started starting a collaboration there. This has been an excellent venue for this. One of the other things that came out of this discussion, however, was we need to be doing a lot of normal people as well, because you can't judge if someone is abnormal unless you have the normal conditions to go with it. So we're also looking at creating something I like to call IMRIC, for the International MRI Consortium, where we can perhaps collect from maybe 10 sites 1,000 normals and 1,000 patients, and we can really do a one-on-one comparison. So this is something we will be investigating here over the next year.
That would be great. That would probably give you a very good sense of what you're doing with.
Wonderful. Well, it was great that we could chat, and you know you can always contact me anytime if you have other questions, Elizabeth.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right. Please say
Is Tara still there, or?
yes.
Yes,
I think
I
she